Many years ago, in a medium reading, a passed away loved one gave me some very good advice. When someone tells you who they are up front, you need to believe them up front. Well, if you're like me, you want to believe the best in people. But over time, I really have learned that this is good advice. And today I'm going to share two stories where I did not take that advice. And I'm hoping by sharing this, it will open your eyes. So, are you ready? When I was 15 years old, I began dating PJ, a boy one grade ahead of me. He had dated a friend of mine who introduced us, and he told me multiple times, "You're too good for me." My 15-year-old self would just laugh and tell him that it wasn't true. Within 1 month, he proved me wrong. We were supposed to go out one Saturday night, but he canceled, saying that his dad had grounded him because of grades, which was believable because he really wasn't the best student. But on Monday, I heard from several people that he was at a party the same Saturday night, kissing a girl a grade younger than me, and I promptly broke up with him. His ex-girlfriend, my friend, heard about his shenanigans from me and she read him the riot act. He then got really angry at me. And time would tell that they would again date much later. The next weekend, though, my house got egged, and he was the only one I suspected who would have done such a thing. At 11 o'clock at night, we had to work quickly with my family to hose off the house before the egg dried, ruining the paint. My dad advised me not to tell anyone that it happened. He explained that boys like PJ would want the story to get back to them. And if it didn't, they would start telling everyone about it themselves. And it would get back to me that way. My dad's a pretty smart guy, and he was right. By the end of the week, I heard the rumor. Several people asked me if PJ was the one who had egged my house. The moral of the story is PJ knew who he was. Not good enough for me. And he told me up front, but I had not listened. In over 30 years since that incident happened, I'd really not thought about this boy. And as I was writing this story, I became curious about him and decided to look him up on Facebook. I found him. He only had two pictures of himself posted, one from his 20s and then a more recent photo. In the recent photo, I noticed that in the background, there were words written on the wall that he was standing in front of, and the largest and only fully legible word in the picture said jerks. Jerks. My hand to God, I could not make this stuff up. I feel like it was as if spirit was letting me know and sending me confirmation that I was right about him all along because maybe some things never change. So people telling you who they are up front is not necessarily a bad thing. I remember working with a woman, my first job out of college, who was talking in a very matter of fact way about all the friends she had in her busy social calendar. And the year I knew her, she was a bridesmaid in 6 weddings. She was and still is an amazing friend to many. My last boyfriend told me on our second date who he was. He said that he was a man who had cheated in almost every relationship he'd ever been in. He also expressed that this was not who he wanted to be going forward, and I believed what I wanted to believe. I often see the potential in someone, and I want to believe the best in people. But the truth of the matter was that Wiley, in his entire adult life, even in his marriage, had been free to do whatever he wanted. He cheated on his wife in less than 2 years into the marriage and later turned their relationship into an open marriage so he could continue doing whatever he wanted. He cheated on the girl that he was dating when he started dating me. I, of course, knew nothing of her until long after he had stopped seeing her. But he had given me the impression that I was the only one he was seeing. I was the first person that my boyfriend had ever been with who held him to any kind of standard and asked him to answer to the relationship. He had been in a couple of long-term relationships during his open marriage, but those women could not hold him to any standard as they were at the mercy of his situation. And I'm sure each one ended in heartbreak, with the women thinking that he would choose her over his wife. Well, at least I didn't have to battle that. I did, though, want so badly to believe in the strength and love of Wiley, and that our unique twin flame connection would be enough for him to want to be faithful to me. I believed that we would be moving forward together as a couple in a real relationship, just the two of us. But it was not sustainable for him. He was, and as he told me up front in so many words, a serial cheater. And he failed miserably in changing that behavior. Now, I'm not saying that people can't change, because they can. People grow and evolve, and when circumstances are different, they can and do make new choices, breaking a cycle that didn't serve them. But in my case, I entered into the relationship with Wiley with eyes wide open. I knew there was a good chance that he would fall off the monogamy wagon, and I failed to pay attention to what were the lines that he continually repeated to me during our relationship about not cheating. If someone has to tell you over and over again that what they plan to do, they're probably trying to convince themselves as much as you. Another mistake I made was I trusted that Wiley would tell me the truth. He had been so raw and honest about his past that it kind of gave me that sense that he would continue to be completely honest in our relationship. I don't really think he ever volunteered the full truth again after that first conversation. He would only be truthful if asked a very exacting question with no wiggle room to manipulate the answer. Maybe in his mind, he wasn't really lying if he had merely withheld information, or could get away with answering exactly what I asked without having to disclose any additional information that could expose his manipulations and intentions. Now, my situation may have gone a little deeper than a case of not believing someone who tells you who they are up front. Towards the end of the relationship, Wiley was blatantly lying. Now, I'm not a doubting, skeptical person designed to be a human lie detector test, and he knew me well enough and was smart enough to know exactly what he could tell me to be convincing. And sometimes there's just nothing you can do when someone deliberately sets out to deceive you the way that Wiley did in our last few months together, especially on our last date, 11 days before our breakup, when he said, I promise you, I won't string you along, when that was precisely what he was doing. He was already most definitely seeing someone new 11 days before I found out he was cheating on me. Perhaps he was even setting out to deceive me and was lying when he had declared 2 months earlier, "My energy isn't open to anyone. I don't want you to worry about that." Sometimes there are things you will never know or understand, but you can begin to pay attention to not only what people tell you about themselves up front, but you can also begin to apply your intuition and to listen more closely to what someone tells you than what someone does.